to this conversation.
Great. So let's start off our discussion. First, we can go one by one, and let's hear about the first question which we have. Uh, so let's start with Harsh. So Harsh, how can recruiters convince candidates uh, to accept their offer over a counter offer? It's a very common question which we have. So any techniques and things which you want to say on this?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying this, right? That I love March days. So thank you so much for this beautiful session on this beautiful day. I'm actually reminded of a quote from Charles Dickens from his classic Great Expectations, right, where he said that it's summer in light and winter in shades, and that's exactly how it feels like in northern part of the country as of now. And speaking about great expectations, I think we all know that all employees, especially new hires and prospects, have great expectations when it comes to salaries. And no matter how much we try, rarely organizations or recruiters can claim that they are the best, because there's always someone better out there, right? So let's be practical about it, and let's always understand that no matter what you do, there perhaps will always be a sweet spot which is sweeter than yours, and hence we need to first of all be okay with that. Having put that aside, I think it's important that we have clear communication as the benchmark of any conversation that a recruiter has with prospects or candidates that they have shortlisted, right? Now, clear communication, both aspects, whether it's monetary and non-monetary benefits, and acknowledging the fact that we may not be the best paymasters, but what is in it for them is the key for successful conversions. And I believe that's stayed true all throughout. I mean, not just today, but all through my journey, I've realized that to be a very important aspect, because along the way, then you create relations, and relations help you also get candidates on board, right? So yeah, having open discussions on why a certain pay scale is offered, what is in it for them, and why they should be joining an organization vis-a-vis just beyond compensation. I think it's important. One more thing I should add there is that it's important to also strategically have some room to flex, right?
Mhm.
That's a recruiter in me who's talking now. So a lot of the recruiters here will align to this. So having that pre-alignment, that approved instruments to sweeten up packages and benefits can really help. And especially if it comes with a well thought through cost benefit analysis, which has been done along with the leadership, wherein we have clearly understood the short-term impact on bottom line versus long-term client retention, and that it definitely helps in sweetening up and getting people on board. Uh, Last thing before I conclude, right, and maybe Abhishek can also add there with his holistic experience.
Yeah.
It's also important to not turn a blind eye towards the trends in the market, I believe, right? It's a common valley that we believe that, we are the best and this is the best that we can do. It's important that we hence closely work with the comp and benchmarking team more often than not and evolve proactively to stay ahead of the curve as well.
Great. Lovely insights with the sweetening up of packages and the cost benefit analysis. So let's go to Abhishek. Abhishek, you have worked with the like tech companies all throughout, and this tech, as you know, that tech hiring is a big pain, right? Like especially with the counter offers and other offers coming in. So how did you tell your team, or how did you convince candidates to accept, say, offer your offer over the what are the tricks and techniques which you want to share, which are shareable right now? So
Yeah,
what do you want to share? Yeah.
yeah. The wounds are still raw. It's not just tech hiring in general. Edra is based out of Bombay. For the longest time, BrowseStack was hiring only in Bombay. So building a tech ecosystem in Bombay, getting people to relocate, that was an added layer of complexity. So I think what we've realized over time is, while yes, salary is an important component, but then when someone looks at an offer, they look at it holistically in terms of the quality of work that they'll do, right? So I think that's where I've always maintained that recruiters need to be tremendous storytellers, and be able to present the overall opportunity beyond just the compensation to the candidate. And then if the recruiter is worth their salt, they will be able to a large extent, convince the candidate saying that, hey, while this may look like a hit in the short term, in the long term, there is upside, right? And there's this perennial RSU versus ESOPs that we come up against all the time if the company is not listed. And I've been in unlisted companies for the last three stints, and I've been on the other side with say a Microsoft or a LinkedIn or an Uber when we were listed. So there are ways to be able to swing that conversation in terms of wealth creation stories, actual stories of people who've made it big in terms of compensation by taking that bet early on in an organization. But then to be able to do that, the recruiter needs to understand the hook. Every candidate has a hook, and it's not always cash. To be able to find that hook, and then drill down further on it. So there will be a baseline cash beyond which a candidate will not come, below which a candidate will not come. But you need to be able to ascertain that, but then be able to add on the other things, which is going to essentially make the offer seem more palatable.
Great.
There's this thing that we used to say at LinkedIn, to make a large jump, you probably need to slow down, take a few steps back, and then run towards making that large jump. So if that means slowing down your salary acceleration for a little bit for that big jump, well, people have done that and it's worked well.
Okay, great. So continuing with Abhishek, and then we'll go to Harsh for his views. My second question is, so in like as we have seen the market post-COVID till few years after COVID, 2-3 years, there was a huge jumps in salaries which we have recorded. So our also TechPay Summit, the reports which we have developed from our engines have shown that there will be 100%, 50%, 60%. But right now, when the funding is not going that well, some most of the funding has dried up in certain segments. There has been a scenario where the salaries are not getting like hyped and hiked that much, right? So now should recruiters, how should recruiters like follow up on this? Like how do they negotiate salaries? Should they do it harder in today's market, since the tech jobs might be lesser as compared to a couple of years back from now? So Abhishek, your thoughts on this, because you have worked with a bunch of these companies, and right now maybe the companies might be cutting down of jobs, or lessening or reducing some of their jobs at some point of time in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah, so I think so the baseline philosophy or the thumb rule philosophy that I go by as a person is not never to undercut anyone, irrespective of the situation, right? Because it's just not fair. It is a value chain and a value that they bring to the table for which they are paid whatever they're paid, right? And it's simple economics in that sense. Now, there are situations where possibly a company will not be able to match the baseline comp that someone expects, below which they will not come. But then they're desperate, may have been laid off, they want the quickest job available, etc. There have been times that we have walked away from those situations, because that then remains a stopgap situation for the candidate as well, right? They would come in. It is highly unlikely that the work is going to be so earth-shattering that they will stick on. Right? The next opportunity that they get, which gets them closer to what they expected, etc., they're going to jump. Right? And that is not something that a startup like us or most startups can afford, especially at a mid to senior level, because it leaves a huge gap of getting someone in, getting them onboarded and productive again and stuff like that. So rather wait and find the right fit. And right fit is very, very important, at least in the startup context, rather than the best fit, right? Because the best candidate may not necessarily be the right or the best fit for the company.
Understood. So Harsh, over to you. Like Abhishek was discussing about the right fit versus the best fit, and your experience in consulting and in like companies who are like MNCs or have multinational presence throughout. So is there any difference how the negotiation happens, or what is the scenario now for the?
Not really. Actually, Abhishek covered it really well. I think the important aspect is that the value should not be degenerated for anybody, right? I think that's extremely important, and organizations and recruiters need to always understand that as well. So the hook that Abhishek mentioned earlier hence becomes important. I think what has also helped a lot of firms in recent past is that they have started to draw their net much wider now, right? So it is more about upskilling the potential rather than going and actually tapping on the actual fit or the talent that we believe will be the best for us. So that hence is becoming increasingly more important as we can see that things are moving at a fast pace, technology is evolving. So how much you can invest in that, broaden your network, your horizon. Don't be fixated on a particular talent versus a b particular talent. Be open, and be open to also fail in some of those decisions that you will make as a firm, right? So I think that is been a bit of a game changer or differentiator, I would say, especially in the competitive landscape we have seen in the past 2 years. A lot of big organizations have become okay now to cast their net wider, as I said, and actually in the process get much better talent at a reasonably lesser cost, if I can put it that way.
Okay. Okay. So, Harsh, continuing with you. So we have seen a lot of remote work and gig roles coming into the play, and AI reshaping the workforce, and it has been quite big in the last 7 8 months. We have seen everything, which is like everything is AI. Any kind of things which are being launched are powered by AI. So how do you see compensation structures evolving in the next 5 years, and how should us, like the employees and the employers, prepare for that?
It's a great question actually, because if you actually look at the evolution in the past, especially 2 or 3 years
Hmm.
of technologies and the advancements, the truth of the matter is that our evolution in terms of whether it's benefits, whether it's monetization, etc., has not been as innovative, if I can call it, or as
Hmm.
creative as actually the technologies have moved, right? We still have, and especially I would say in a place like ours, the traditions still take over rather than moving ahead with the times. I mean, I it's controversial to talk about remote versus work versus in-person work, but that's a classic example, right? Because
Yes.
we now want to move into, and recently there were news of many organizations, in fact big firms, incentivizing people to be in office and aligning that with bonuses. Well, to start with my personal, and that's again a personal note, on a personal note, I believe it's important that we reward productivity over presence,
Hmm.
right? So that's my take on remote work, without putting too many details around it. Because Abhishek, I can see, he's smiling, because it's always a very controversial thing for us HR leaders to partner with businesses on the same. But from remote perspective, I think productivity over presence is a very important aspect that we should be looking at, right? We should not be fixated about one size fits all. And hence, that is where the culture also of the firm comes into, or the organization comes into foray, and actually is put out there rather than we going with the flow of what the world is doing, right? Second, on gig, you mentioned, I think on gig, I would say the comp models will evolve a lot basis skills rather than roles, right? It will start to evolve a lot more basis that. Again, one size does not fit all, especially when it comes to gig models, and especially when it comes to specializations. And hence, core competencies will start to get more rewarded rather than the roles or the designations that people have. And from AI perspective, while all of the above is also true because it's a part of it, but I think rewarding of skill growth,
Hmm.
right, and adaptability will be a key. So what I mean by that is, of course, the adoption of the latest technologies in some way should also be a creative way of not just rewarding, but also recognizing talent who's doing that in-house, right?
Great.
I think that for me will be the key differentiators. And an overarching of all of this will be again transparency, right? That remains. We spoke about that earlier as well. People
Okay.
will want to know. People will want to know why they get certain grades and why not others, and how we can be more transparent about it, how we can, Abhishek talked about the value that they are creating and why that value comes with a certain price tag and what is in it for them in the long term, etc.
Mm.
One more thing I will add, Abhishek, before you jump in, right? And this is again something that I believe you will relate to being in industry for a long time. I think a lot of times, and that's where what I meant when we said traditionals, right, still remain. A lot of our benefits still remain very standard. For example, benefits, right? And many organizations still believe that they should only cover spouse and children when it comes to benefits. I mean, come on, not everybody wants to get married, as an example, right? Or they are not married, so why not cover parents? It's a very simple thing, but if you do get coverages for parents from medical benefits, but there are a lot of benefits for which you have to pay extra, and you don't need to pay extra for spouse and children. I mean, they're absolutely fair, but as we evolve, I think that's what the new generation wants to see. Can we have more personalization in terms of benefits and acknowledgement of skills rather than the traditions that still continue?
Great. So to sum it up, Harsh, we discussed about productivity versus presence in the remote work scenario. We discussed about compensation models, the comp models basis skills, and rewarding of skill growth and adaptability of new tech, which should be recognized like any person who is like upgrading himself or herself to the newest trends. And then we talked about transparent communication regarding all the policies which are policies and ethics which are around in the company. And then the last one, which is very important, is the empathy towards each and every employee and personalizing the policies, which makes a mindful organization. So Abhishek, I will go to you with the same question. So with remote work, gig roles, and AI reshaping the workforce, how do you see compensation structures evolving in the next 5 years? And what should we prepare for, like as both employees and employers prepare for? So over to you.
And I'm glad that Harsh went first on this so that I can happily piggyback on a lot of what he said. Um, I think comp structure is a fascinating time to be in comp, really, with all of these changes, right? Because the traditional benchmarking will not be as is, given all these changes with AI. So, totally second what Harsh said. I'll probably go a step further, saying that probably benchmarking of roles is going to be role plus skills. So, the role would probably be the baseline, having, let's say, 80% weightage and 20% on skills. If you remember, services companies
Yep.
ages back used to have like a hot skill allowance,
Yeah.
like that, would probably come back to the fore, right? Because just Gen AI alone may not remain a role. It'll get integrated with other roles, which are more mainstream roles, and then Gen AI becomes a hot skill. I'm just taking a random example, but just to illustrate the point. The other thing, which will also, and Harsh touched upon it, which is also going to help in differentiating careers and roles, is what people do with that, with the new technology, right? Are they becoming more efficient and productive at work? And if they are, the way their progression happens from a commercial standpoint as well is going to be more accelerated, right?
Mm.
And that differentiation is going to clearly, it's already there for high performers, average performers, etc. But it's going to be called out even more starkly, um, in the near future, with adoption of technology and all of these things around batch parity, etc. While this probably dissolves over 10 years now, will probably dissolve over 3.5 years, with people adopting new technology in the way they work. Um, Gig workers are a reality. I think I think it's now up to the organizations to be able to leverage the gig ecosystem to the best possible. I think that the talent is there. There are platforms where the talent is available. It's just about organizations breaking free of some of the traditionalist mindsets and creating avenues for the gig workforce to help them. Because even now, when you look at headcount planning, etc., all the times we're just talking about, oh, so we need to achieve X, hence X number of FTs. Um, the entire conversation doesn't necessarily revolve around gig unless something breaks. And we say that, okay, something we're not clear about, let's infuse additional people, and then so that we don't disturb our headcount plan. I think i think that's going to change as well, right? With the gig economy, wherever there are specialized skill sets and the organization is not sure of how long term that skill set is going to be to the strategy of the organization, gig workforce will be part of the at least short term headcount planning for sure.
Okay, great. Uh, so, Abhishek, my next question is about another very big challenge for talent leaders today is about retention of talent, right? So we did all the hard work, we got the best folks out from the market into our company, and then how do we retain them? So beyond salaries, what strategies should talent leaders trust for keeping top talent engaged and committed to the company, and maybe uh, put 120% of their efforts into that company when it's difficult to scale up at some point of time, maybe during some kind of economic recession, and like things like that.
Yeah, I think it starts right at the hiring stage. Really,
Mm,
if you hire the right people, chances are that they'll stay longer,
mm,
right? If their aspirations are aligned well to the organization, if the communication is clear, if expectations are set around the culture and what they'll experience, all of that I believe starts at the first recruiter call,
mm.
which I call the first window to employer branding, really. And then when the rubber hits the road, when the person actually joins, if there is congruence between what they heard before and what they experience on the ground, chances are that there will be lesser dissonance and they will stay. Now it's about reducing noise for them, removing blockers for them, and ensuring that they are able to do their best work. Um, I believe that for the longest time, HR and probably unfortunately so has taken on the mantle of talent management and retention. It should be the line managers, right? HR should make an attempt to be able to ensure that every person gets the best manager that they deserve. But then the retention mantle should fall on the line managers, really. um, I hate to take on a retention target per se, because there's only so much that you can do beyond building frameworks, etc. The employee experiences the organization through their immediate manager or the skip level leader, and that if that is not in alignment, there's nothing that really HR can do. So I think creating frameworks and programs for managers to become best versions of themselves will go a long way as well in terms of retention beyond comp, etc. And
Great.
probably a last thing, and I think Harsh touched upon it in his previous answer.
Okay.
um, Most organizations focus on benchmarking cash,
Mm,
right? Benefits is so underrated, and it's
mm,
such a beautiful component that can actually. So we talk about theory meeting practice. So hygiene factors versus motivators. I think benefits clearly is a motivator versus a hygiene factor. I'll give you an example. LinkedIn wasn't the best paymaster in
mm,
terms of cash, but the benefits were like unheard of, at least in India. We used to give like a dog walking allowance to people, and I was able to convince someone to join us because she used to stay with, well, she was working remotely, she had a dog, and she was like, oh, if I switch jobs, who who takes care of my dog? Well, we have a dog walking allowance, we're going to cover for that, and he's still with the company, right? So I think having benefits and the power of benefits is a big motivator, than just the cash piece which we benchmark.
Lovely. I think great insights on different kind of benefits. So over to you, Harsh, on this. I will repeat the question once. So retention is a challenge for talent leaders today. So beyond salary, what strategies should talent leaders trust for keeping top talent engaged and committed?
No, thanks. First of all, I will challenge something that you said, Surjit, and it's not to put you on the spot, but it's just to make sure that, something that we all say, or sometimes the line managers and the HR also end up communicating,
Hmm.
may not be an aspiration for everyone. You mentioned something about how can employees give 120%? Why? I think the question should be that, how can they just give their 100% of the time that is required? That's it, right? And be productive. So I think that in itself is a status quo that needs to be challenged. And once we start doing that, then automatically we'll be walking in the shoes of your employees, and then your retention starts from there. right? I think it's important that culturally we make that shift to begin with, wherein it is not just about meritocracy, but it's about how supportive and caring can work along with meritocracy, right? And that I just wanted to lay that out first as a baseline before adding on to what Abhishek said. I think that is the key for any retention, right? We stay retained in a relationship in our personal lives because of that as well, right? And hence, it's important that we understand that. And I'm not sure whether we'll talk about today a lot about work-life balance, which is constantly abused term for the past 20 years that I've been in the industry. But it's essential for us to understand that work is a part of every employee's life, right? So it is actually already there, a part of their lives. So how we can be supportive and caring along with, focusing on meritocracy, I think that is extremely important. And hence, the one again, the core aspect for us to understand is aligning purposes. Abhishek gave a great example about an employee's purpose aligning with the organizations, right? Where he talked about a certain benefit, and that's exactly how we need to look at some of these elements that can we bridge that purpose gap. A lot of times you see people not staying under, even if they're getting great salaries, big roles, is because they start to lose that purpose alignment of what they want in their lives vis-a-vis what the organizations want out of them, right? We can't always get it right, but or can't get it 100% aligned. But how can we help them bridge that gap? And one of the things we spoke about earlier was about how your benefits can be more, bespoke, more personalized, and can be more suite driven, wherein you can pick out of these bouquet rather than one size fits all, right? And that's how people can start to align with their purposes vis-a-vis staying aligned with the organization's purpose. I think also a few things like are very important at all of what we said between me and Abhishek. It's about leaders walking the talk as well, right? How we are building that culture which actually makes people stay. I'll just give a quick example, right, before we move on. I remember during COVID, and this was during the second wave, wherein we started to see a lot of people getting infected, right? And we, in our team itself, there were, every second day there was news that either the individual himself or herself or their family members were getting infected, and they were getting impacted. And it was a lot of emotional trauma along with, of course, the physical trauma people were going through. So one thing that I remember I did at that point in time was that I proactively wrote an email to all the stakeholders of all the recruiters and team members, whoever they were interacting with on a daily basis, and made them aware of the situation and told them that your work will get impacted in the next 2 weeks at least, and we'll keep you posted on how it works. I never even gave it a major thought because I thought that was my job to do, so that people are aware of what's happening. But the impact it had on individuals, right, where they suddenly felt that relief that that the management, the leadership has our back, and they are taking that stand, and they understand that what we're going through. I think that impact was something that was felt all throughout the ecosystem we are working on. So those, I think, are important aspects of how we also walk the talk, walk the culture that we talk so much about, and create that ecosystem where people give their 100%, and which is good enough, trust me, for work to get done.
Great. So let's move on to the next part. We had a great session of insights. Now we have a very fun time, the rapid fire round, which we have designed for all the folks that have joined in, and for both the talent leaders which we have here. So I have a set of questions which we have prepared, and Aradhya and me are going to ask each one of you. So
we have an option to pass, right?
You have an option to pass, yes, but we expect an answer from you. Like it's very funny. So let's start. Who wants to start it? And we can start the event now.
I can go first.
Okay, Abhishek. So Aradhya, you want to take on the questions with Abhishek?
Sure.
Please go ahead.
All right, Abhishek. Being a president is very hyped these days. But if you could be president of a country for a day, which country would it be, and what would you do?
I don't know what I'll do. I would probably be president of Cuba. I really love the country. Maybe I'll smoke a few Cuban cigars. Um, didn't think beyond that, but yeah,
Great, great. Very unique choice of country, by the way. Not many people would have gone for Cuba first thing. Rajma chawal or kadhi chawal for every meal for a year. Which one would you choose?
Rajma Chawal.
All right. If you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Hmm. Wow, that's difficult. I would probably switch lives with Sachin Tendulkar.
Oh, great, great. His international masters scores are also going great, by the way. Yesterday, he had a 200 strike rate. After a long time, people got to see a master class from the Master Blaster. Great choice. Uh, Super strength or the ability to read minds?
Ability to read minds.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying for most of us. If you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Ability to read minds.
Something
Time
different.
prime. Okay.
Something different.
Ability to convince anyone. I
Mind
need that
control,
now.
then.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Too many offer drops right now.
I
If
can feel
you
the
could,
pain, Abhishek.
yeah. If you could have any animal as a pet, like the person who you convinced to join LinkedIn, no restrictions on which animal it would be, which animal would you choose as a pet?
Wow. I don't like animals really, so I really don't know. Maybe a maybe a koala bear or something which doesn't move around too much. Like
Okay.
yeah,
Something low maintenance then.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. And last rapid fire question. You're stuck in a lift with a candidate who just ghosted you.
Mm.
What will you say?
I might do stuff. I may not say much. Yeah, that's it.
Great, great. Very fun answers, Abhishek. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sarvjeet.
Okay.
Are
Thank
the
you, Abhishek.
questions the same?
No, not the questions are not same.
Come on, I was making notes. That would have been easy, right?
Great. Let's start with Harsh then. Harsh, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and how would you use it?
I mean, teleportation, perhaps. So I
Okay,
would love to be anywhere at any point in time. So maybe that.
great. What's a talent or hobby you have that would surprise your colleagues?
None actually, because my colleagues know a lot about my talents. But maybe writing poetry, perhaps.
Okay, great. So the third question, which you have answered.
Uh, Maybe I will go to I don't know, maybe a beach town in Mauritius, or perhaps a nice beach in Sydney.
Great. Or you can go to Cuba where Abhishek is.
Yeah, I can first go to Cuba because I have a superpower now, teleport, and then I will probably go to some other place as well, along with Abhishek, so I can take you.
Great. Now, if you want to be a character, so suppose you're a character in any movie or TV show, whichever you like, what would you be and why?
I would be Iron Man.
Iron Man. Okay.
Why is, I mean, it's no brainer, right?
Okay.
Challenge Elon Musk then, so we need that right now.
If you could master any one skill instantly, what would it be?
Reading minds.
Reading minds. Great. I will give you two options. One is if you could have unlimited food for life or unlimited travel for life, pick one and give me a reason why.
Unlimited travel for life, because then I can also have unlimited food while I'm traveling. So.
Okay. The last one, if you could be invisible for a day, what would you do?
Nothing. Why do I need to do anything if I'm invisible, right?
Great. So that was like lovely answers and lovely sportsmanship from both of you. I think we move on to the next part where we have the final thoughts, and this part will be taken care by Aradhya. So over to you, Aradhya. So by the way, Aradhya is the one who had developed this the salary index, which we are launching today. And so over to you, Aradhya, about how for the next round, for final thoughts and advice for our recruiters and folks who are listening, tuning in. So over to you, Aradhya.
Absolutely. There have been some really incisive answers and a few surprising outswingers from our speakers here. So thank you both. And I'm sure that the comment section, when people see this later, will blow up. So we might be referring back to you in case we are given some really hard questions which we can't address. But after the fun comes some practical advice for all the recruiters who have tuned in and the folks who will watch this later. I think one of the main takeaways is that organizations as well as recruiters need to break the molds of traditional thinking and develop new ways of talent acquisition and retention, driven by the way new age technology has changed business. So, we ask both of you to share the most important thing you feel recruiters should keep in mind as they want to climb the corporate ladder towards leadership positions like you have achieved. So, Harsh, if you could kick off this final stage.
I lost your voice a bit in between. Can you just summarize the question?
There's no question as such, just any final thought or any final advice that you would like to share with recruiters who want to climb the corporate ladder towards leadership positions.
Okay, so final advice if people want to climb the ladder on leadership positions, right?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, the one thing I will say is that you need to be leaders in your daily lives, in whatever roles you are, right? You don't become leaders with titles, right? So if you are behaving, acting, and living and breathing leadership, and leadership is not about having a title or having 10 people to report to you. It's about how you are collaborating, partnering with your colleagues, with your candidates, with your stakeholders, demonstrating that leadership skill. And then, of course, with time, things come. So that's first. Second, patience, right? It's important for us to realize that things come when they're due and with time. So title will follow, but you need to start demonstrating the skills right now and not wait for the titles to come your way, right? Third, and last thing I would say before Abhishek chimes in is relationships. Spend a lot of time in building that because that's the key. Everything else, perhaps in the future, AI can do, right? But relationships and emoting and emotions and connecting with humans is still something that you will need humans for. So if you're doing that, then you will be there sooner than later.
So people, I guess, are the focus point of your advice. You should focus on leading people, on building relationships with them, and of course, patience, as you said. Abhishek, your final thoughts? Would you like to weigh in?
Sure. So I think for recruiters, I always feel that they need to be super curious, willing to learn and unlearn, because be it a tech recruiter or non-tech recruiter, if they're not curious about what's happening in the industry, they don't understand enough about the business, they will not be able to have a meaningful conversation with the candidate. And that's where it all starts, right? That's how you build your credibility and you can grow up. Totally second harsh on relationships. And that's something that a lot of people do not index enough on, and not necessarily relationships within recruiting. I know that there's a fair amount of tension between recruiting and HRBP or recruiting and comp a lot of times. But instead of taking that to heart and creating barriers there, creating those relationships, A, is going to make your day-to-day much easier. And B, you'll have an advocate on the other side when it comes time for that big promotion. So that becomes really, really important. You may be great at your job in a silo, but then when it comes to that big role, which will require you to work with multiple stakeholders, no one's going to really back you up unless you have built those bridges. And finally, make your job, make your manager's life easier by taking on more. Right? I think that's going to, like Harsh said, if you demonstrate those skills while not yet in that title, that title is going to come quicker to you sooner than not. Right? So yeah,
Great.
ownership of someone's career is not with the manager, not with the company. I believe it's totally with you. So yeah, the individual needs to take the first step and the second step and the third step.
Yeah, I think recruiters who are listening in are going to benefit a lot from, practical advice, because generally, like everybody else, even recruiters want to progress their careers while they are accelerating others' careers. So I think that brings us to the end of the TechPay Summit. Sarvjit, any final thoughts?
Great. We have a lovely discussion and we have got a lot of insights from here. So we will enlighten others, the other recruitment teams which are tuning in right now or maybe tuning in later. We'll send it across, and we have learned a lot of things like its leadership. How is it about people, and how HR and talent acquisition rotates about people. We have seen a lot of technologies coming in. We have seen a lot of AI agents doing a lot of work for us, but the fundamental thing remains human, and that is what we are here to do. So I think great discussion with Harsh and Abhishek, and lovely to have you guys take time out and discuss with us on this. And thank you so much for joining in and taking your time out. And it was lovely meeting you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.